And if I turn that, I'm hearing myself coming back. Let's turn that down. And yes, good afternoon. I hope you could hear that. I just thought I'd make something up for you to listen to while you're getting comfy. If you're not hearing anything, if you could let me know, because I haven't got a clue whether it's working or not. I'm seeing some people appear to be watching me. Please say hello, because it's would be nice to make sure this is working. I spent most of the morning setting this up. I did some tests the other night. It's very, very Heath Robinson, this whole contraption. I've got a little webcam up there, but then I've got some proper microphones that are plugged into the computer, and I can see things waggling on the screen. So, as I say, I hope it's all working. But actually, I could turn this up, couldn't I? I could just hear myself. Look at that, I can hear myself coming back. Isn't that clever? Anyway, yeah, I thought I'd have a go at doing one of these things because, well, everybody else is doing it, really. I'm not going to sit here and just strum guitars and sing songs because, I don't know, I just don't feel comfortable doing that. But I like chatting about stuff. I mean, I can talk for England. I mean, I spent 7.5 years on every Friday night with my good pal Vic Morgan talking about music on Radio Devon. So I thought I'd talk about a few things, and I don't quite know what I wanted to talk about, but I was doing some sorting out in my flat because I live in a modest-sized little place, and it's mostly full of junk. But I've got some records here. Where did I put them? Here. And, you know, there's been all these sort of, I suppose, like polls and things on Facebook and Twitter and whatever, saying, what was your first gig? What was your first record? And what was your first this? And your 10 favourite albums, that. Well, you know, we've all done that, and I must have filled those in about 6 times with 6 different lots of answers. But the first gig one, I think, is a really interesting thought, because if I look back at when I started going to see music, I didn't see much until I learnt to drive. Because if you live in the middle of nowhere, you can't get anywhere. I mean, where I lived in Bovey Tracy, the last bus back from anywhere was at about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the evening. So going out was a non-starter. Then when I passed my driving test, that was it. Boff. Off I went 7 nights a week sometimes. But there was one gig I went to before that, and it was the day I left primary school. And my dad took me to the Ottery St Mary Jazz Festival in East Devon in 1984. I think it was something like the 11th of July, possibly. Something. It was July sometime anyway. And he took me to see Ken Colyer's Jazzmen and Humphrey Littleton's band. And if you know anything about jazz, you know these people are absolute legends. And both bands did 2 sets each. And I still have it. It's in my mother's house. I've got the programme signed by everybody that played, including the great Ken Colyer. I think one of these have got a picture. I've got one with a picture of it. Yes, I have. There we go. Ken Colyer. Now, Ken Colyer is pretty much responsible for everything as far as British rock and roll is concerned. Because Ken Colyer had the first jazz and blues club, particularly moving towards blues, in London. It was near Heston Service. It's that really grotty place that you don't want to go to if you're on the way to London on the M5, but sometimes it's necessary to stay there. In fact, me and a friend of mine, when we went to see Depeche Mode and the Sisters of Mercy in London in 1993, we actually slept in the car in Heston Services, which I later learnt was a really, really dangerous thing to do. Anyway, Ken Colyer, who I got to meet because nobody at the gig actually got to see him other than when he was on the stage, because he wasn't very well. I think he passed away a couple of years later. But because I was a 10-year-old, my dad said to me, he said, if you go through that door, son, he'll sign your programme. No one's going to say no to a little boy wanting his programme signed. So I said, excuse me, Mr. Collier, can I have your autograph? And he gave me his autograph, and that was that. But I met the man that started rock music in London. His band was called Ken Colyer's Jazzmen. That's their first proper LP. I know they did some stuff before it, but New Orleans to London was the first LP. And there's a great blues on there, Going Home, which is just a terrific track. I urge you all to listen to it. But the interesting thing happened when this album, Back to the Delta, came out, because in his band he had two lots of musicians. He had his main jazz band with people like Bernard Bilk, later known as Acker, Diz Disley on banjo, Stan Gregg on drums, who also played piano. But then you have the Ken Colyer skiffle group. Now, he had a guy called Alexis Corner with him. Now, we all know who Alexis Corner is. He was one of the main people, him along with John Mayall, Chris Barber. These were all the people that started everybody off. But Alexis Corner started with Ken Colyer, and he played on that record. And that is probably the earliest British blues recordings ever made. Midnight Special, Casey Jones, Casey Moan, absolutely brilliant. So if you get a chance to listen, you should get hold of that album, because it is one of the greatest records. It's one of the most important records ever made. And just after that came this album, which is Chris Barber's New Orleans Joys. Now, Ken Colyer fell out with his band, and even though it was called Ken Collier's band, it was kind of thought of that Barber was actually the leader. Anyway, they all fell out, and they all became the Chris Barber band, and Pat Halcock's became the cornet and trumpet player of the instrument that Colyer played. But pretty much most of the band stayed the same, including Lonnie Donegan on banjo, who played on both records. On this album they were making, they decided to record a couple of skiffle tunes. Now, of course, this kind of came from Colyer first, because Colyer had the skiffle group with Alexis Corner. Donegan played a bit as well. They made some recordings in, I think, 1953 and 54. But then after that, they recorded Rock Iron Line and released it under the name of the Chris Barber Jazz Band, featuring Lonnie Donegan. It didn't actually have Lonnie's name on the record, I don't think, but I think later pressings probably changed that. Anyway, Rock Iron Line, the record that made Donegan the first rock and roll star, if you like, in Britain, was off this album. So they're all interconnected, and all of this stuff is over 60 years old now. But it's just truly fascinating, and I think, for me, realising that when I was 11 years old, I got to meet the man that kind of pretty much started everything. Before John Mayall, before Alexis Corner properly, before anybody else, I just think's quite mind-blowing, really. So I will always be very grateful to my dad for making my first gig, Ken Colyer. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that story in, because, I like talking about stuff. Now, what comments have we got? Nice collection of plants. Well, yeah. Now, plants are an interesting thing in this place, because none of them are mine. They've all been dumped on me. Some belong to Ellie, who is the singer of Secrets for September. And she moved house a few years ago, 7 years ago, I think, and said, can you look after my plants for a few weeks? And I think that one behind there is one of them. And then various other people have left plants for me to look after, and I've kind of been stuck with them, really. Anyway, if you've got any comments from you, please say anything you like within reason. I talk about anything except politics. Live video comments, and here he goes on. Jules is on. Martin, Hetty. Hello, Carol. Nice to see you. So I don't know what to talk about, because this whole lockdown thing's a bit of a weird thing. Oh, hello, Sarah. How are you doing? Now, my friend Sarah, who is one of the best singers in Plymouth, without a shadow of a doubt, she's brilliant, great performer. She's been doing some live gigs from her home, and then she kind of took them outside to sort of entertain the people where she lives, and she was streaming them, and that got me thinking, with the whole kind of live streaming thing, is that it's so just you, me, and a camera, and I don't know, I just find it a bit weird. If you sort of, you get your 4 band members to record something separately, you put it together and you make a video, I can kind of get that, but I don't know. I think if you're going to play, it's nice to play with people watching you. I mean, some gig. I mean, I've played loads of gigs where nobody's turned up, and it's still not been a problem. I once played a gig somewhere. I'm not going to say where, but it was a very nice venue. But there was lots of other things going on, and I can say, hand on heart, that 2/3 of the audience bought one of my albums, and that's because 3 people paid to come to the gig. But I was still playing to somebody. Whereas, when I look ahead, I see a sofa, I see a lampshade where the lampshade's slightly ajar, I see a load of cassettes, and I just can't do it. I just can't do it. But, if people are watching me rant on, well, not ranting, just waffle on, and you want to know something, I might start talking about other things that I've been doing. In fact, I'm going to talk about about Mike Westbrook in a minute, because in fact, I'll go and I'm going to show you something. Just wait there. Now, even though what I've done there. Now, even though none of us have done anything. There is a new album by Kate Westbrook, and I thought I'd show it to you because it's not out till the end of July. But look, it's got a lovely fold-out cover, and if you look at the book that comes with it, and I'll show you some of these. Most of these nice pictures that are in the book were all taken by me. All up in Joss, there's Coach York there, and yeah, I'm really, really proud of this album. The Westbrook albums I've done have all been great. The first one was amazing because the late great John Heisman produced it. We recorded it up at the Barnfield Theatre as a live album, and that's fantastic. It was brilliant. It was a great gig. Everyone was a bit nervous because they knew it was being recorded, but that came out brilliantly. And then the second one I produced, which was all the recordings I had made of the band, featuring the late great saxophone player Lou Gare, who sadly passed away a few years ago. And then we went to Bristol to make the Granite album, which was a very strange thing for me, because even though I've been recording music, playing music, touring for 28 years, I've never been properly in somebody else's studio where they take charge, and it was weird, and I got to admit I didn't like it. I just felt really uncomfortable with how it was set up. It was quite a small room anyway we were in, and I don't think I played my best at all. Move on a year and we go to a different studio, and it's the studio owned by Joss Stone, which is in the middle of halfway up to Bristol, probably about 20 miles from Tiverton, something like that. And that was fantastic. It was sunny. It was a nice room. When you weren't playing, you'd just go sit outside in the sun. Her cat bit me once. Billy Bottle took a photo of that, which is like a moving photo, so you actually see the cat go. Horrible thing. But yeah, it was great, and this was a fun album to record. It's one of the most fun projects I've worked on for a long time, and I'm really proud of this. And I think possibly tomorrow, is it, or next week? When I've lost so much track of time. I think it's on Friday, 1st of June. Is it? Anyway, sometime this week. There's a video of one of the tracks that's going to be released, which I also filmed and edited when we did that show in Germany last year. So you'll be able to get a taster for it. But if you want to give this Westbrook stuff a go, the new album, Earthfelt, I would recommend you listen to it. Anyway, enough of that. Now, Sibian's Friday gigs are great mind. You should hear his solo. Oh, he's the violin player. Yeah. Yes, I have heard of and does lots of looping and stuff. Funnily enough, like I do, which I might do another improvisation in a minute. But yeah, it was it is good when you can do these things. I think I just don't have the confidence to do it. But some of these, I mean, I like watching, Fish from Marillion. I mean, all right, he hasn't been in Marillion since 1988, but everyone calls him Fish from Marillion because, you know, Brian Wilson will always be in the Beach Boys, even though he isn't. And he does some really good little chit chats on a Friday and just talks about anything. And I kind of thought I'd do the same. Right, Martin Hutchins, talk a bit about Pete Brown and Battered Ornaments, please. Chris Spedding, their guitarist, one of my favourite guitarists, who played on many records and session musicians. Well, indeed, Chris Spedding, he also played with Mike Westbrook. He played on an early version of Metropolis, which was done as a concert at the that place that David Gilmour did his On an Island thing, Mermaid Theatre. And he played on the Love Songs album, and there's a video you can see on YouTube called The Original Peter, and he plays on that as well. You can always tell it's Spedding because he's playing a Telecaster. If the sound's got a bit more body to it, then it's usually Gary Boyle playing a Gibson of some description. I don't know that much about Pete Brown's Battered Ornaments, but I have met Pete Brown on several occasions. The first time I met Pete Brown, I think, was at Arthur Brown's Astoria concert, which was at the Astoria in 2005. I was there in charge of the merchandise, along with my good friend Martin and Dave Roberts. And Pete Brown, what Arthur did, which is a great idea for a gig, is he had 3 sets. He did an acoustic set with his trio with Nick Pinn and Chris Bryant. He then reformed Kingdom Come for a one-off show, and it was a one-off. And then he played with Instant Flight and did side 1 of the first album. And Pete Brown was there, and he did a bit of poetry, and he sang a couple of blues numbers, and he was terrific. And I had a really nice little natter with him afterwards, and that was really nice meeting Pete. And then about 2 or 3 years later, I think it was 2 years later, at the Marquee, which was when the Marquee was in Leicester Square, and it was like the basement of a pub with a windy staircase and a vocal PA, and that was about it. Pete Brown organised this poetry thing with a guy, I'll get his name wrong, I know, but I think his name's David Amrand, but I probably pronounced that completely wrong, and I do apologise. And again, Arthur Brown was involved in that, and I ended up doing the PA for the evening, and that was a lot of fun. And Pete told me a few more stories, and I think he sent me a CD afterwards because he knew I was doing the radio thing, and that was really nice. And then I met him again at the last ever Colosseum concert, which was at the Shepherd's Bush Empire in London. And I went to the after show, and this was quite funny because I didn't have a wristband for the after show. And a lot of these big venues, if you haven't got the right pass, the right wristband, doesn't matter who you are, you're not getting in. And I was offered a guest list for this gig, but I'd already bought a ticket, so I said, that's okay, I've got a ticket, but I'll pop in to say hello afterwards. And they wouldn't let me in. So Kate Westbrook went up to the security man, and she sort of said, I hope you don't mind awfully, but this gentleman's with our party, and we want to come in and just say hello to John and Barbara, and I know he doesn't have a pass, but he is with us. Anyway, let me straight in. So if you want to get backstage, take Kate Westbrook with you, and it's all on the winner. But it was great that night. There were a lot of good people there, and I had a good old natter with Pete. I mean, Pete doesn't gig that much, but if he ever does play, go in and see him, because he's got loads of great stories. He's written some of the greatest lyrics in rock music. Obviously Cream is the main thing he's associated with, but he's done so much over the years, and you're as likely to see him on TV talking about the great songs as he wrote as you are to see him doing a little low-key poetry and spoken word night in a small pub in the East End. So Pete Brown is an absolutely lovely bloke. Right, what have we got now? Oh, Michael Webb. Hello mate, how are you doing? Now, Michael Webb is one of my oldest friends. I've known him since 1993. He came to the last All Living Fear gig that we did, when we basically did covers with a few original numbers. I think by that point we had about 5 original numbers and about 10 covers. And we hit it off straight away. He is one of my best friends I've ever had. even though there's been a period of time where we didn't really see much of each other because we lived in different places. And I'm so glad he's back in All Living Fear, because every time him and Andy get together, and especially if Paul's around as well, we just have a great laugh, great fun. And I will always be indebted for Michael, because had he not joined the band when he did, the band probably would have not existed. So that period in 1993 where we went from what we were to what we became, Michael was crucial for that. He designed the All Living Fear typeface that you see on most of our albums. He even designed the letterhead. He designed the cover of the first demo tape, and every gig we've done since he's rejoined the band has been great fun. So good stuff. Hello, Sarah. Sarah's saying hello. Sarah's one of my best friends who I have known even longer than Michael Webb. I'm not going to say how long, but we started in the theatre, Bovey Tracy Players Amateur Dramatic Society, when my parents were both involved in it, and I did do a tiny bit of acting, and then I moved into doing sound effects and then the lighting. So, my future was secured fairly early on, to say. Right, there's something here. Any chance of Secrets for September again? Andy Ford. Well, yes. We talked about this. Me and Ellie have been talking about this for a while. And I can tell you, Secrets for September, as far as we are concerned, is a current band with me, Ellie, Mike, and JP is back on the bass guitar with his brightly coloured socks. Obviously, what's happened in the last 3-4 months has meant we've not been able to do anything. But before that point, I was looking for some shows to do. Ideally, we want to maybe do one up north, because we never really played up north, and that's where Ellie's based. So we kind of thought the idea would be quite good to book a show, and then the day before book a rehearsal room somewhere in Manchester or Liverpool or somewhere, and then we all go up the day before, spend all day rehearsing, and then play the gig afterwards. But that's not to be with the whole lurgy sort of horribleness that's happening. But no, Secrets for September are a definitely happening thing, Andy. In fact, we've just put all of our material has just gone up on Spotify. So not just we only had the first 2 EPs up there for ages, but now everything's up there, so you can take a gander. But yeah, the band is a happening thing. What else have we got? Anything else at the moment? It's a weird thing, because I'm seeing some comments on there, and I'm seeing other things on my phone. Watch party. Oh. Right, nothing else. I'll tell you what, if you like, keep leaving some comments, and I'll do you another little improvisation. I mean, you can't really see what I've got here because the camera's at the top. Well, I can sort of show you, actually. If I turn the camera down. This is all the stuff that does all my things. Down here, I've got these things called loopers, which, for those of you that don't know, it's like having 2 tape recorders. And when you press the button, it starts recording. You press another button, it plays it back. You press the button, it'll play something. It'll record another bit. And I've got 2 of those. And then here I've got all my gadgets and gizmos and effects that I use for making all the strange and wonderful sounds. There's a compressor, which is like a volume control. There's a distortion pedals, chorus pedals, echoes, and all sorts, really. So yeah, I'll play a bit of music. I've just got to turn the other microphone down and turn the other one up. If I just do that, then you should still be able to see me more or less. So yeah, here we go. There you go. That's something else that you've never heard before and you'll never hear again because I just made it up. And that's what I like doing. I love improvising. I think there's nothing worse in music than somebody I knew quite well in the past. Some of you will guess who this person is. Said to me, the best gig is when a band plays a song and it sounds just like the record. To me, no, rubbish. I like things to be. You want to recognise the tune, but I like things to be different. I like things to be spontaneous, and that's what when I do my solo shows, no two songs are ever done the same because I like to improvise. I like to put, I'll write the set list out. It might only be 6 songs and it might be a 45-minute set because I'll just go off at a tangent and do a load of improvisations. And that's what we did a lot with one of my bands called Pathfinder. Again, we had like a 5-song set, but we could play for an hour if we wanted to because with Matt and Rich, we could just improvise all the time. And, sometimes you can improvise, you can jam, and it just gets really boring. Other times you just can create something brilliant. You can never tell. But I've made some recordings that way. I've made 3 albums that I called Valentine because I was playing a gig at the Picture House in Exeter, which was our stomping ground for me and a lot of my musical friends for several years. Thanks to our good friend Andy B. And I decided to do an improvised gig where I did kind of what I'm doing here, but I had other instruments as well. I had a few keyboards, I had glockenspiel and all sorts of stuff. And I just literally do a quick little rehearsal at home, which I'd record. That was my backup plan. Then I would do the gig, record the gig, release it the same day, use the stuff I did in the afternoon as bonus material, made an album, and I did 3 of those. And I was very proud of all of them. And actually, what I'm doing today, I guess, as I've done a couple of tunes, and I'll probably do another one, is the first time that I've done any kind of live improvisation for a very long time. I mean, I do get to do some of that sort of stuff with the Westbrook Band. There's a nice section in the Granite piece where Kate recites some words and I improvise some music to go with it, and then a few other bits that we do as well. But with the other band, I mean, All Living Fear, we don't tend to do that so much because it's more of a sort of fixed rock thing. Although saying that, the solos are always different, and with Michael in the band, we do get to make a few more stranger sounds. In fact, Sue mentioned All Living Fear, I think. Did you not? Yes, Sue Oldworth. More All Living Fear gigs, please, Matthew North. Yes. Well, we were due to play 3 at the weekend of lockdown. We had one in Plymouth, one in Exeter, and one in Bristol. But of course, it was just before Boris made his speech, but we kind of knew it was a no-goer, so we didn't do them. But they would have been our first 3 gigs of the year. We do seem to be quite unlucky with gigs early in the year because last year we were supposed to support Christian Death again in Plymouth, and that didn't happen because Christian Death lost all their equipment or something. I think they possibly might have just looked at a map and thought it was too far, but hey-ho. Isabel Crombie. Now, Ishi and Phil are 2 really lovely people I know in Exeter who, they're a lovely couple. They also do music under the name of the Corduroy Curiosities. And when all this madness is over, if you've never seen them play before, then you should because they're great. Good story. What else have we got in here? Right, Sarah Lou Lace. Right, Miss Sarah. The only thing I know of Lonnie Donegan is My Old Man's a Dustman. Right, go onto your Spotify when this is over, naturally, and listen to some songs by Lonnie Donegan. New Burying Ground, Midnight Special, basically all the songs that made the Backstairs Sessions EP. And then you will be fully educated on on such things. Right, live video comments. This is weird, right? This phone says live video comments and there's nothing, but I go and look on the PC and then I can see them all. Andrew Jackson. I love improv. It's free-flowing and makes changes from records. Yeah, well, Andrew, you see, is a Tangerine Dream fan, and that's what they've done their entire career. They will play a concert for 3.5 hours, mostly improvised, and then they'll split it up and they'll make 2 albums out of it. And that's how great music's done. In fact, another Arthur Brown story, when he made those albums with Klaus Schulze, who used to be in Tangerine Dream in the late 70s, Arthur told me that, he literally turned up to the gig, went on stage. In fact, one gig, he didn't have a pass. Again, this is this whole thing about not having passes. He didn't have a pass. They wouldn't let him in. And he said, well, I'm the singer. I'm performing tonight. And, eventually he got in the building and he literally had to walk through the crowd, climbed on stage and then did the gig. Totally improvised. And a lot of that material ended up as being on side 4, I think it is, of Klaus Schulze Live, and there's an album called June, which I think some of that was from live. It was all improvised, and yeah, sometimes if you get it right, improvisation is brilliant. Sarah, same here. I love band gigs over solo ones. Is that exact reason? Every time is different. Yeah, and that's the great thing. In fact, I had the privilege of playing with Sarah's band down at the Junction about 2.5 years ago. They were doing a fundraiser for their guitar player who hadn't been very well, and I got to do, I was supposed to be doing 2 songs with them. That ended up being about 5, and that was bizarrely the first time I had ever done any kind of local rock band gig, I think, ever. I think the last time I played on stage with a ballsy rock band was when I guested with Skin at the Islington Academy, and that was 10 years ago. 10 years ago. No, 11 years ago. It was the end of 2009, because I'd made a film with them. Those of you who don't know who Skin are, they are, or were, a really great rock band from the early 90s. You used to find them a lot next to other artists in the discount section of chart return shops. And they're a really great band. Me and a friend of mine used to go down to Sounds in Torquay on a Friday, and we'd raid the bargain bins, and there'd always be a new Skin CD, and they were a really great band. And then they got together, and I suggested to them, how about when you reform, we make a film about it? Because, I work in TV, I'd love to film you guys, and we did a little test run, an acoustic warm-up, and everyone was happy, so we made this film called Skin Reunited. We went to London. We went to a beautiful house in the Midlands, where we recorded their rehearsals, and then we went to London and they did 2 warm-ups at the 100 Club. We then went to Wolverhampton and they did a brilliant show at the Wolfram Hall that we filmed, and then we went to Donington, and this was the first time. I've never been to festivals really. Up until that point, I'd been to a couple smallish festivals, Big Green Gathering and stuff with Arthur Brown as his tech, but I'd never been to a big festival, and Download was the first one I went to. We were only there for the day, so there was no camping involved or anything, but we went there. We had access all areas to everything. It was a real eye-opener because, I'd say never been to anything like that. And there's quite a funny story that we were sat down just having a chat, me and my friend that I was making the film with, and Brian May wanders over and he sort of says hello to us, and we looked at each other, what is Brian May? And said, oh, hello. And then he said, oh, I'm awfully sorry, I thought you two were somebody else. And he walked off a bit sheepish, but hey, I spoke to Brian May and he was very friendly. And I got to meet the guys from Dusty Hill from ZZ Top, and it was just like full of A-list rock musicians. Some were there playing, some weren't. But the thing that I always remember backstage at Donington was there was this massive flight case. It was huge. It was like the size of a big sofa, and we were just sat on it for a while, and then we got told to move, so we did, and I had a sticker on something which said ZZ Top hats. So ZZ Top have the world's biggest flight case just for their hats. I mean, that is serious rock and roll. I mean, that beats 10 Marshall sax anytime. Anyway, we made this film. It was really good, and to say thank you, Matt, for doing it. They did some shows at Christmas time, and I got to play with them on stage at the Islington Academy, which was completely sold out. And I played on the encore with them, and it was tremendous. I had never experienced being in a big rock band with like rock band type fans, big audience, big everything, and for that sort of 2.5 minutes, it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And the only other time I've done that since was when I played a few numbers with Sarah's band at the Junction, and that was brilliant fun. It was really good fun. I'd love to do it again one day. Right, what else have we got? Take some photos. What of, Sue? I take photos all the time. If you've not ever seen any of my photos, there's tons on Facebook. I've photographed, again, not strictly officially, it has to be said, but I have photographed many great people. In fact, one of my favourite photographs, I'll show it to you because it's on my wall. Have a look at this. There you go, that big picture up there of David Gilmour. I took that in London at the Royal Albert Hall. Ooh, you can't see me too close, do you? I took that at the Royal Albert Hall in 2016, back before lots of horrible things happened in arenas and you could take your bag in without it being searched, and I had my SLR in there. And I have a really nice story about my David Gilmour photos, because I went to see Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets at one of their first warm-ups at the Half Moon Putney. And at the end of the gig, I had 2 photos with me that I took that I wanted to see if Guy Pratt would sign, because there was one of Guy playing his bass, and there was another of Guy, David, Benedict Cumberbatch, and Chester Kamen in the shot. And I think Greg Villencanes was also in the photo. And I wanted to get them signed, and I hung around for ages. And Barry Knight, who is Pink Floyd's head of security and David Gilmour's bodyguard, and obviously was head of security that night, I said to him, are they coming out this way? Because I'd like to get these signed. And he said, what you got? And so I pulled out these photos, and he looked at them, and he sort of said, well, these are all right. Where's your pen? So I handed him my pen, and off he went, got Guy Pratt to sign them, and brought them back. So I felt really chuffed that had those pictures not been any good, that I wouldn't have got them signed, and I've got them kept away in a safe place. So safe. I can't remember where they are. I do know. They're inside my sleeve of Rattle That Lock. Yes. Anyway, what else have we got? Any more messages? Speak to me, because if you do, then I can think of other things to talk about. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll do another little improvisation, and then I'll chat some more about stuff. But yeah, anything at all you want to talk about, just leave a message. I'll turn the other mic down. Well, I hope you heard all that okay. I just realised I got a cup of tea here in my Cure Bug. It's still just about warm. If I wasn't doing this, then I would take this cup of tea, I would go to my microwave oven and stick it in for 30 seconds. And if anyone says they never do that, then you're all lying, because everybody heats up tea in the microwave, I think. Anyway, some more messages. What have we got here? Richard Fisher. Richard Fisher, yes. What can I tell you about my friend Richard Fisher? I can tell you, we went to a mutual friend's birthday meal. My friend Sarah. I know a lot of people called Sarah, don't I? I must have mentioned at least 5. This is another one anyway. And we spent the entire evening talking about the Beatles. Specifically, the Let It Be album. And it was one of the most fun nights I'd had for a very long time. Because, anybody that says they don't like the Beatles is a liar, because there has to be something by the Beatles that you like. To me, I like everything the Beatles did. I don't think they made anything bad. I particularly love the latter era, as many do. I got completely obsessed with the Let It Be album, to the point that I even acquired via the internet an 88 CD set of all the raw recordings of the entire Let It Be sessions, and I have played them several times. All the real nerdy stuff where, some of it is just like an hour of them just chatting, but I just found it totally fascinating. But anyway, it's one of the things I am looking forward to this year, because the guy who's making the new remake of the Let It Be film has said he's still working on it during lockdown, because let's face it, it's just a bloke with a computer editing a video, so that is something to look forward to. But yeah, now the Beatles will always be I suppose they've done it. They are the biggest band there ever has been, there ever will be. They split up over 50 years ago, and whenever it was 2017, I think Sgt. Pepper was still one of the biggest selling albums of 2017, because they did the new mix of it. It was certainly the biggest selling vinyl LP of that year. In the same way that Last Christmas by Wham became the biggest selling vinyl single of 2019, whenever it was it came out last Christmas. So therefore, after it first came out in 84, Wham did get to number 1 with Last Christmas as a physical product. So, we all get there in the end. I have a loft full of unsold CDs, and every now and then I'll do a count up and realise there's a few less than what they used to be, because we'd sold a few, and some of the All Living Fear albums are now out of print. So, people do buy this stuff in the end. So never give up. That's the thing. Never give up. You make your first record, it may sit in your loft for 10 years, but eventually someone will pick up on it. And this is the reason I like websites like Bandcamp, because you can release an album and nobody takes any notice of it for maybe 5 years, and then you might get like 4 or 5 people on the same day or buy a copy of it or send you a message. Oh, we've heard this, it's really good. I've told my mate, he really likes it. So it's always a slow burner. And I think this is why the music industry is such a mess. It's a complete mess. And it's the record industry's fault. I'm sorry. Whenever was it? 1998, was it? I can't remember exactly what it was. Robbie Williams, 40 million quid from EMI. Ridiculous. Because what happened? He never made a hit record ever again. Did a few naff covers albums. But 40 million quid. 40 million quid back then, when people were still buying records. It's only really been since streaming came along. Even file sharing didn't dent sales as much as streaming has done. 40 million quid on one artist beyond his prime. Ridiculous. Absolute rubbish. David Bowie, Pink Floyd. David Bowie, first album, 1968, a few singles before that. didn't really break through until 1972. So 5 years. In fact, there's a film about it called 5 Years. First 5 years, sorry, it's on the iPlayer. Well worth watching. But in 5 years, he did nothing but the record companies believed in him, so they gave him plenty of time, and then he delivered the goods. The same thing was with Pink Floyd. Yeah, they had those couple of early hits, but then they weren't really commercial for about 5 years. And that's what it is. Long-term investment gives you the best results. And if you're doing it on your own, you can do the same thing to yourself. You do something, you release it, whatever. Just because it doesn't get played on the radio straight away doesn't matter, because sooner or later somebody, if it's good, they'll go, oh, I like that song. Yeah, that's a good tune, that. Yeah, I like that. Oh, I've looked you up on the internet. I'm doing a gig next week. Would you come to support me? I like your songs. This stuff happens all the time. It's happened with so many people that I know that have been, they've not been around. I mean, me and my mate Paul, we had our version of All Living Fear for ages. Then we changed the name to Corrosion. And then we bizarrely got an email out of the blue from BBC Radio 4 who said to us, oh, we're doing this documentary called A Gothic Quest, and we want to talk to a goth band about goth music, and we see you're playing in London on Thursday. Can we interview you? And so we said, yeah, sure. So they came along, they interviewed us, and they chatted to a few of our friends as well. I think Alan was there. If you're a goth, everybody knows Alan. He's always in the front row. And yeah, we did an interview with him. I think on the finished, it was 2 half-hour programmes. And I think our contribution was about 4.5 minutes. There's probably about 2.5 minutes of music and about 2 minutes of interview, something like that. And it was great. And at that time, we hadn't done a lot for good couple of years, and cause I think that was 2003, I think, and we'd done an EP in 2001. Didn't make an album until a year after, but yeah, we got on Radio 4, and these things happen. All right, what have we got here? I've had lots of who've I had waves from? Leo Devine. I'm not going to call you by your nickname. Leo used to be my boss, but he's got this great story that will outlast any of my stories, because he once shared the stage with Joy Division, and I think I'm right, Leo, it was the Lee Rock Festival, 1979 or something like that. Anyway, he says, what amp are you using? Well, I'll tell you what amp I'm using. I'm using a Bugera, which is an El Cheapo copy of a Black Star HT5 head, which is little 5-watt valve amp. This one's got a few more controls. It's got EQ, built-in overdrive, built-in reverb, but I don't use any of that. I just use the clean channel. But for recording at home, it's brilliant. It's really low volume. As I said, I live in a flat, so I can't crank it up. I haven't had to get any complaints yet from my neighbours about this afternoon, so that's good. But yeah, just a nice little amp, and I've just got it plugged into my homemade 2x12 cab, and yeah, it sounds fantastic. In fact, the last couple of recordings I've done, my Eurovision tune, which I don't know if any of you have listened to it, but it is out there. I was challenged by a friend of mine from work called Michael Checker, who said to me that he's mad into Eurovision, and I was laughing at him on Facebook about this obsession, because I'm not a fan of Eurovision. And he said, right, I'll play your records. I just made the record with the vinyl that I did a couple of years ago. He said, right, I'll play your record if you come in and do a Eurovision song live. So I said, yeah, all right. And I went in there and I did a really slow, I have to say, slightly Roger Waters-esque version of Brotherhood of Man, Save Your Kisses for Me. And I decided I was going to record it, and I decided then I was going to record it, and I fiddled around with it and eventually put it out, and you can listen to it on Spotify or Bandcamp or anything you like. And that amp there, I used all the guitar work on it, and it's fantastic. And I picked it up really cheap, like about 100 quid from once. I think new they're only about 150, but if you want a low power amp like that, that's a good thing to have. Right, who else have we got on here? Richard Fisher, Paul Felden. Now I've heard you. Nice Dave Gilmour style. Well, it's David Gilmour. He doesn't like being called Dave. Yeah, this is quite good. There's a few of you actually watching. My mate Kevin's on. If you're still on, Kevin, Kevin Armstrong is an amazing musician. He ran a guitar masterclass that I went to, and that's how I got to first meet Reeves Gabrels. And it was only for about an hour and a half, I suppose, and it was just the stuff we learnt was to do with, how not to. If I can remember the sort, not the mic then, the sort of stuff we learnt. Not have so many effects on probably would help. But it was like the sort of standard kind of rock scale is called the pentatonic scale, and you sort of go those sort of 5 notes. And Reeves' first thing was, always play the in-between notes as well, so you can sort of go. So it's made it sound more interesting just by chucking in 2 notes. But the thing I really learned from Reeves was that when you're improvising and you hit a wrong note, you make that wrong note appear right. And I do that all the time. So I could be going. And I've hit that clanger, but then you can just go, and then it becomes right. And I found that really inspirational, and that's when I thought I want to start a new band where I can do more of this sort of stuff, and that is how Secrets for September started. And that was purely through Kevin's guitar masterclass that he organised with Reeves. And and he also convinced me to get on an aeroplane, because I was going to go away on an aeroplane, and I hadn't been on a plane for quite a long time, and it was all booked, it was all set up, I was all excited the night before, couldn't sleep, and I had to leave really early for the airport, and I just froze when I left. I could not walk up the stairs, I had a total panic attack, could not get on that plane. And anyway, I posted something on Facebook, and Kevin left a comment saying, well, I do about 100 flights a year with my job, and they're all really safe, blah blah blah. And I thought, actually, he's right. And I did end up going away for my little holiday. I went to Amsterdam, I saw Nick Mason again, and had a very fun time. And then about 3 months after that, I took 10 flights with Mike Westbrook touring around Italy. So I got over that, and that was all thanks to Kevin. It was marvellous. Right, who else is nosing on here? I'm probably going to wrap this up soon, because you really don't want to. Oh yes, Nick Goff, very very good call. Yeah, when I started with All Living Fear, we made our first CD, which was called Jessica, and we literally recorded the album with Steve Payne up in Runcorn. He played keyboards on it. His drummer from his band Legend, John Macklin, played on it. We recorded it. We released a CD. And when you make an album or a CD, it's like, what do you do with it? Because we had no record deal. We did it all ourselves. This was pre-internet just. I mean, some people were using the internet in '94. We didn't use it for about a year and a half later. And we played at the Marquee in London about the time it came out, and this guy came up to me, and I'd been told he was going to be there, and his name was Andy Bruce, and he owned Resurrection Records in London, which was the go-to record shop for goth music and metal as well, but mostly goth music in London. Any band, any obscure band, any band you'd ever heard of was in the racks. You could get it. It was great. I first went in the actual shop that same trip I mentioned earlier when I went to see the Sisters of Mercy in London, and we slept in Heston Services. Anyway, Andy said, can I have 5 copies of the CD on sale and return? And I said, yeah, sure, here you go. And then I got a phone call from him on the following Tuesday saying, can you send me some more? And I said, how many do you want? He said, 50. Yeah, get on. 50 CDs, Andy. Woo. And he ended up being our distributor. He sold all our stuff because he had his own label anyway, and he had several bands that were quite successful, Incubus, Succubus probably being the most well known, and he distributed our CDs. And it was brilliant because our CDs were turning up in shops. They were on Amazon in the early days. And I never saw it myself, but I have it on good authority from my friend Michael Johnson that when Tower Records was still in Piccadilly Circus, there was an All Living Fear section in Tower Records. And that was all because of Andy. And he was a great, great friend. I used to ring him up and we used to just laugh and laugh on the phone about this and that. If we were at a gig and he was there, and I'm not going to mention the band, but we were at a gig once where this band was truly awful. And I immediately took a beeline to find Andy after they played. And we both burst out laughing, and his description of this band is one of the funniest things I have ever heard, and I'm not going to tell you who it was or what he said. But anyway, unfortunately, Andy passed away a couple of weeks ago. But while I'm on here, I just want to say that anyone that knew him, he was a brilliant, brilliant guy. He certainly helped put me and the band on the path to what we did, because it meant our music got out there before iTunes, before Spotify, before any of that. People bought CDs on recommendations, and you'd get your mail order list through the post from Resurrection. He would describe the new releases, and people bought stuff based on that. And I pretty much owe All Living Fear's career, or certainly a large chunk of All Living Fear's career in the early days, was down to Andy and his shop. So I don't know if Katrina's watching this, probably not, but Andy was a great bloke, and I'm going to miss him very much. Yeah. So Nick, thanks for bringing that up. Who else have we got on here? Oh, my friend Nicola's watching. Hello, Nicola. Me and Nicola go to the blues. Oh, that's the thing. With this whole lockdown thing, all the sort of routine, everyone's routine has gone. And one of my routines is Tuesday night, down the blues bar, Vince Lee and Al Wallace. Brilliant. Two brilliant musicians. And, you know, they play down there every Tuesday. And I usually make Nicola down there. And it's really good fun. But sadly, not to be at the moment, because we can't do anything. Paul Fielder, yes, I was going to go to the Christian Death gig. Yeah, that was a pain, wasn't it? We did support Christian Death once before at the Camden Underworld in 1997. And that was a weird gig, because we were told to get in there for about 4:30 load in. Christian Death had got there early for a sound check. They started their sound check, I believe, at 12 o'clock. I got there pretty much on time. And I bumped into Bob, who most of you goth types know as the singer of NFD, but he was the singer of a band called Sensorium at the time. And he was there propping up the rail looking really, really bored. And I said to him, you know, what's going on? And he said, oh, they've been sound checking since 12. And so they've had a 5-hour sound check. Their keyboard player at the time was the singer's son, who was like playing with his toys in the backstage area, this like really loud child. He was probably only about 10, and then he went on stage playing keyboards in his dad's band with these really sort of not very 10-year-old friendly lyrics. Anyway, it was all a bit of a bonkers night, really, but we did all right. It was good fun, and we were looking forward to opening for them again, because bands like that seldom come to the Southwest. I mean, what have we had? The Sisters played Beautiful Days, but that was a festival, and it was sold out before they were announced. And the Cult played Exeter, and I think that's been about it for years. And apart from Inky Pasopius, of course, who played at the Cavern last year, and that was a really good, well turned out show. Anyway, I am rambling on now, so see what else we've got in it. If you want to say anything or ask anything or anything else, now's the time to do it, because I should probably think about wrapping this up now, because I've been rambling on for way too long. But kind of what I will say, I suppose, is we are living in this really weird time at the moment. I myself have kind of got quite used to it, because I think being an only child, being so obsessed with music, as a kid, I didn't like going out and playing with my friends. Not that I had many, because I'd rather stay at home and listen to records, and that's all I really do now. I mean, all right, I've done a bit of recording, a bit of writing, and it's just been all right for me. And I haven't even really missed playing gigs that much. I think probably because I've done it for 28 years non-stop, I just wanted to have a break. But I'm kind of thinking now, if we're sensible and we don't mess up, and certainly seeing what was going on in Plymouth earlier in the week, some people were definitely messing up big style. I can see us getting through this, and I can certainly see things being a lot better in about 6 months, but we got to hold on to this. Now, Sue has just made a message. She said, can you mention your band with Matt and Rich? Well, I wasn't sure whether I was going to do this, but I did want to say something as well about my friend Rich, because some of you knew him, Richard Maiden in Exeter. Fabulous musician, great bass player, and I really enjoyed being in a band with him and Matt Bacon. We didn't play for that long, but what we did was good. And I've got this little computer setup that I've been using to play. Now, if this works, then I'm going to click a button, and I'm just going to play you a little bit of our friend Rich playing his bass guitar in one of our rehearsals, just because I just wanted people just to see him, really. Here we go. So there you go. There was Rich. Now, there's something really weird. I've just watched a bit of this on my phone while that was playing. And can someone answer this? Do I sound like a chipmunk? Because the audio sounds really, really fast and a bit weird. And if it's been like that for the last hour and a half, I think I'm probably going to end up regretting doing this. Anyway, I'm going to do a little improv to end this thing. Mike Soundy said, what's your favourite Secrets for September song? Well, that's easy. It's called To Behold, and it's because it was the first one we ever wrote. First song, best song. Although, Man from Torquay's probably also really good. But I hope it's not just my phone, but I could probably even play it to you. I'm going to end up regretting doing this. Anyway, I'm going to do. That's really weird. That is really, really weird. Anyway, if it is, then I do apologise for sounding like a chipmunk. And anyway, I'm going to play a bit of music, and I'm going to say goodbye. Say goodbye. There you go. That was a little improvisation based on To Behold by Secrets for September, which hopefully, when all of this ends, all this bad stuff ends, and we can start playing gigs again, and all my friends in the music industry can get back to their work, because actually they've probably lost out more than anybody. Are the crews, the techs, the trucks, the lights, the sound, you know, and now we've got these drive-in concerts which are a bit weird because, well, watching a gig from your car, knowing all the people that are putting the gig on aren't getting paid their normal rate, and all the rest of it, nah, not for me. Let's wait a while and stay safe. Don't do anything daft, and we'll be all right. So yeah, thanks for listening to my little chit chat. As Michael has reassured me, a bit chipmunk when it starts. It's just it catching up good. Because if I have sounded like a chipmunk, like it sounded like on my phone, I will be very, very sad. So yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Maybe I'll do this again one day. But yeah, it's been good fun. It's been weird. It's been interesting because this is, for me, it's been just like doing a gig. I've had to set everything up, make sure it works. I must admit, pretty nervous doing this because I've never done anything like this before. Hoping I don't prattle on too much. But yeah, I think it's been all right. So thank you very much, and I'm going to say taddy bye. So bye bye.